Thanks again, Mr. Ross. Some of you may have been thinking, well, why did we do this today? It was for those folks that bail out on us and go to Sherman on trumpets. There are about 60 of you, and I thought, if we do it take care of this in Fort Worth next week, they wouldn't get a chance to be able to witness that. So anyway, good. It's just a wonderful time to see something like this happen, and we're very, very excited for Al and looking forward to his service, God's people. Can God's people make sense of what's going on in the world around them? Where are we right now in prophecy? If you think about the book of Revelation and everything the book of Revelation covers, where are we in that stage of events that we see listed there? Where would you place us in the role of what we see actually being rolled out in the book of Revelation? Can God's people survive, and can God's people thrive in the situation that we see, this world that's governed by Satan? Can God's people be hopeful, young and old? Can our young people be hopeful as we see what's happening in the world around us? What are our young people supposed to think? For what are our young people supposed to plan as we go through these days and talk about the events that we see happening around us as they're leading toward the ultimate return of Jesus Christ? Should we even be thinking about what's going on in the world? I've talked to people before who have said, you know what, some of those things are so bad, I've found that I just have to block all of that out and just go on with my life. And when it comes, but I'm not going to think about it. Is that the answer about how we should be viewing the world around us between now and the return of Christ? As a child, I grew up watching Mr. Armstrong on TV on Sunday mornings. How many of you were in that situation where you watched the TV show, The World Tomorrow? How many of you watched that? I remember as a kid, there were two pictures that were the most vivid to me. Think about, for you, those of you that have seen those, what were the images that you really, really remember? For me, it was always the beast, the way that thing came and the horns coming out, this hideous thing in all these colors, and I thought, wow. That's pretty incredible. I wouldn't want to meet that in a dark alley. But then, secondly, as I would get the TV guide every week, that was one of the things that my parents were very, very cost conscious. But for some reason, they bought the TV guide. I would get that on Friday, and I would look through all of the events. In fact, I would sit down with my dad. Very strange story here, but my dad, we had a family of 7, actually it was 6 until Jake came along, but we had one bathroom in the family, so the door was just kind of open, and somebody might be in the bathtub, and then you headed around to the bathroom. We just couldn't have only one person in the bathroom at a time, and I forgot about this till my dad reminded me of this about 10 years ago. But what I would do, I would get the TV guide each week, and it would be Friday afternoon. My dad would come home. He would be sitting in the bathtub. The bathtub's kind of high, so I was down. I would sit on the floor. My dad would be sitting in the bathtub, but he was down below, so there was a little bit of blocking there. But I would read him everything that I thought would be interesting on TV in the next week, and we lived in between Dayton, Cincinnati, and Columbus, so we had the antenna that you could move 45 miles to each of those in that direction, and we got all kinds of channels. We got Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16. We didn't get 18. We got 22, and then it went on up. But that was a lot of channels back then. We got all those channels. But one of the things that I would do as well is I would sit there, and he said, Andy, do you remember when you used to do that? I thought, I did that? You were trying to take a bath, and I would sit there and read? You did that. And I remembered. I did that. I don't know why I did it. I didn't think about a lot of things that I did, and I can't believe my dad had enough care and concern for me to not say, get out. What are you doing here, Andy? Get out. He actually just sat there as I went through everything. But I also went through when Mr. Armstrong was on Sunday mornings. And he was on a lot. When you've got Cincinnati, Dayton, and Columbus, he was on several times. But so we would watch, and so many times I remember seeing the beast. But I also saw the 4 horsemen. And remember the white horse would come. And then it would fade away as they talk about that, and then would come the red horse. I remember that. Do you remember that? I mean, those are the two big things that I remember. Well, I want to talk about these four horsemen, because these four horsemen that we'll cover today, if anything, in looking at Bible prophecy, we, at least as far as I can see, as far as we see the events that are to take place that haven't taken place, yet the events that are going on around us, I believe the four horsemen are riding. They are riding. Now, have they reached their full gallop, their full out sprint yet? No, I don't believe they've done that. But I certainly believe that they are riding as we live in the world that we do today. God's people are to watch. God's people are to be aware. God's people are to be aware of their own lives. And we're to be aware of what's going on around us. So as we lead up to the Feast of Trumpets this Thursday, let's talk about these events, about the four horsemen. Again, about the kinds of things that are going to be going on leading up to the time when we begin to get the end events happening prior to the return of Christ. The four horsemen are discussed in Revelation 6. That'll be home base today. We'll start there as we review that study today. Revelation 6, the seals, these seals are actually introduced in chapter 5, but they begin to be opened. The interesting thing is that 6 of the 7 seals are opened in this one chapter. The 6 of the 7 seals come very, very quickly. There is not a lot of time that's given to them, at least in the book of Revelation. 6 seals, and then we have only 7 seals. The 7th here begins in chapter 8, but 6 of them are covered. Of those, the first 4 seals are these 4 horsemen. It would give the impression that the 7th seal is by far the most significant of them, as it goes into the detail that it does versus the very brief amount of space and time that are given that is given to these other seals. There is a tremendously wide variety out there as well of ideas about what these seals represent in professing Christianity today. Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown commentary states this: there are many who hold that the first 6 seals already have been fulfilled. Have they? Have the 6 seals been fulfilled? Look across the page, those of you that are in Revelation 6, and look at verses 12 through 16 as we talk about that. Those verses are discussing what they call the cosmic disturbances or the heavenly signs. So there are quite a few in Christianity that say even that has been fulfilled. Would we say that? The 6th seal, as we mentioned, includes the great earthquake, the sun becoming black, the moon turning to blood, the stars falling. That's the 6th seal. In those that say that it was fulfilled, feel that it was fulfilled by the overthrow of paganism back in the day when Christianity was, quote, established under the Roman Emperor Constantine's edict. That was when the heavenly signs were happening. And once that occurred, that occurred, then we're into now the 7th seal. It finished at that point. You wonder who the holder of that belief is. It would certainly not be us. How in the world do you get that explanation out of that seal? How in the world a person does that, I think, is a major stretch of the imagination. But let's look here in chapter 6, verse 1, as we look at these horses today. And for those of us that were around back then watching the TV show, think of the horse coming forward. Here's this white horse, this powerful, beautiful horse coming out with a rider on it. Verse 1, when I saw the Lamb open one of the seals, I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see. Let's come and see what's going on here." Verse 2, we see a couple of characteristics here mentioned. I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. crown there is the Greek word Stephanos. The term is singular, and it means the crown or wreath given to a conqueror. He had this conqueror went out. He went out to conquer, and he did conquer as he exercised his authority. Different folks have thought different things about this. Let's keep your finger there. We'll go to Luke 21. As we know, the Olivet prophecies mirror much of what we see here with these four horses. We'll look at Luke's passage, Luke 21, verse 7. Luke 21, verse 7. As we see these things listed, it lines up so well in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21 with these four horsemen. We see an explanation given of these horses. Luke 21, verse 7, so they asked him, Teacher, when will these things happen? And what will the sign be when these things are about to take place? He said, Take heed that you're not deceived about it. Many will come in my name saying, I am he. Either, as we've talked many times, either that person is in fact Christ, or that person is the representative of Christ, or saying that that Christ is Christ, saying, yeah, Jesus Christ is Christ. I represent Jesus Christ. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I am serving with His authority. Take heed that you be deceived about this, saying that I am He. And the time has drawn near, therefore do not go out after these. Do not go after them. So verse 9 then gets into what we would consider to be the second of the horses. So we see religion, false religion, this deception of a teaching about Christ. False religion is masqueraded here as true religion. And connected to, as we go back to Revelation 6 and we look at that, connected to this teaching of false religion is conquering. It's conquering and going out and, conquering, and their intent is to conquer. If we were to think that the white horse that's mentioned there is the same as Christ riding the horse as he returns, so we think, okay, when has the true church in this age, when has the true church been about the business of conquering? When has that happened? That has not been the case. In fact, in this situation, let's go, if we could, to a couple other passages before we draw a summary conclusion on this. 2 Corinthians 11. Most of you know where I'm going with this in terms of false religion, but 2 Corinthians 11 mentions this. I see more and more in so many ways. I see it in dealing with situations, even present situations within the church, and folks that are outside of the church having a mask of religion and a mask of truth pushing in on the true church. I've seen that and dealt with a couple of those situations recently, and it is very deceptive. There are many deceptions out there, and those deceptions are very powerful as they attack God's people. Not just what we see coming out of the false prophet at the end, we'll talk about here in a little bit, but the whole system of false religion that is present. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 13. I mean, we've read this many times, but it is the nature of it. This will be the nature of things as we near Christ's return, as this horse continues to ride. When we think about the seals, the seven seals, when we think specifically about the four horsemen, when do those horsemen stop riding? Do they stop riding when we get to the fifth seal, which deals with the martyrdom of the saints and the great tribulation really hitting? Do the horses stop? The horses ride right up until the return of Christ. They are riding and continuing to ride. When is the ultimate leader of the false church at the end? When is the ultimate, you've got the beast power and you've got the false prophet that are both working in concert with one another. When is that total representative of false religion, when does he stop riding the horse, so to speak? He's destroyed with the brightness of Jesus Christ coming. So that horse is still riding. Even though we move forward through the seals, those don't start and end until the return of Christ. 2 Corinthians 11 speaks to this. And brethren, we've got to be aware of this. As our young people are going off to college, be aware of this. Be aware of the deceitfulness that's out there. Be grounded in the truth. Be grounded in the Scriptures. Be grounded in the teachings of God. Because there are folks out there that are false apostles, verse 13. They are deceitful workers. And they transform themselves into apostles of Christ. They give that image, that look. And he says, no wonder. Satan himself, the god of this world, he transforms himself into an angel of light. Imagine this, the darkest being that has ever existed or that ever will exist, he can transform himself into an angel of light. It's no great thing if his ministers also do that then, as ministers of righteousness, but whose end will be according to their works. Daniel 7, let's look there. Daniel 7, Mr. Kylo, a while back went through Daniel and so much of the teaching that is there as we heard that recent message up in Sherman. Daniel 7, Daniel 7, verse 7. He talks about this fourth beast that comes along. Daniel 7, verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly dreadful and terrible, strong, huge iron teeth, devouring, breaking in pieces, trampling the residue with its feet. Of course, we would understand that to be the Roman Empire and its various resurrections, the various horns, as is talked about here, the 10 resurrections, the final resurrection yet to come. But then he says in verse 8, I was considering the horns, and there was then this other horn, another horn. It was a little one. It came up among them, before whom the three of the first horns, what was that, the Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Visigoths, I can't remember, the three initial of that empire, that it says, it came up among them, before whom the three of the first horns were plucked out by the roots, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. As most of us are aware, in terms of that, the back history, we've got 554 AD, Justinian came along and united the two. He brought religion to the Roman Empire, and as a result, got the other previous resurrections of the Roman Empire subdued, and then developed the Holy Roman Empire. He brought religion to the empire and the power of that, and through it, here it says, speaking these pompous words. We see the false religion giving strength to this empire through its various resurrections, to where the papacy was in a sense, ordaining each of those resurrections down through that time. Continuing, we looked at verse 8. Let's look at verse 19 now. Verse 19, he says, I wish to know the truth about this fourth beast. It was different from all the others. That was so incredibly powerful, and it devoured all these things and broke and trampled with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on its head, and which the three fell, and then continuing here, that horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke these pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. This conquering, and went out to conquer and was conquering. And he did so until the Ancient of Days came. When does that happen? Well, that's talking about the return of Christ. And a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, about which we're to keep here as we come up to the Feast of Trumpets. Part of that Feast of Trumpets is in a sense that climactic point when the judgment is made. The judgment is made in favor of the saints of the Most High at that point. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. So this horse continues to ride, and it's doing its conquering, and it's doing its prevailing even against the saints. Continuing in verse 23, so he said, this fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on the earth. It shall be different from the other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth. It shall trample it and break it into pieces. The 10 horns are the 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. And then another shall rise after them, subdue the 3 kings. And this verse 25, he speaks pompous words against the Most High. He persecutes the saints. The Aramaic there is to wear them out, or he wears down the saints of the Most High. And shall intend to change laws and times. The saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But we see as we continue there at the chapter that does not last forever. So this false religion, this false power, it was victorious. This horn is victorious, and it goes about conquering. And in several cases here, we see conquering, even prevailing against God's people. Many have died under the hands of this evil false religion. This false religious system in New Testament times, claiming to be Christ's system, makes war, and it's victorious against God's church and God's people, the true saints of God. God's church and God's people don't make war. We're not in the process of, and when has this happened in the past, that God's church, God's people have been engaged in war in conquering any heathen or overthrowing any governments or dominating other governments. That's not what it is to be a part of the church of God. That's not what Christ set up for the church. God's people, God's truth, have never been declared the official state-imposed religion of any state or any country. Constantine did use a religious system to replace the pagan system in the Roman Empire. He did that. And then as Justinian came and bound the two together, we see conquering and victorious actions by that. We can't talk about this subject without going to 2 Thessalonians 2. 2 Thessalonians 2 is packed with a tremendous amount of information, much of which, frankly, we have to say we don't know exactly what this means, but we do see a lot of markers here. 2 Thessalonians 2. Think of the contrast here as we talk about this. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 1. Brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, as I'll add, which the Feast of Trumpets pictures, and our gathering together to him, which the Feast of Trumpets pictures, to him we ask you, not to be shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us. A lot of junk mail, in a sense, was going out at that time that was not authenticated, as though the day of Christ had already come. He says, don't let anybody deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first. What is the falling away? Has the falling away happened yet? Some thought at different times there was a falling away. Is there a falling away yet to occur? I don't think we can answer that. I don't think we can answer that. We have seen folks fall away, but it does say that there is a falling away that is to take place. It doesn't say the great falling away, it just says the falling away, unless the falling away comes first. And this man of sin, this man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of perdition, the son of who makes ruin, who makes loss, who makes waste, the son of destruction. This person is going to be revealed. This person is going to oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God, or that is even worshiped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And we talk about temple here. Is the temple referring to an actual temple that is set up in Jerusalem that come down and take over, and he sits there? In what respect is this meaning? I don't know that we can definitively say what the answer is, but we do see this individual is going to set himself up and claim to be a very, very important godly person, but in actuality, he represents everything different. Think of the contrast. Jesus Christ Jesus Christ was the human representative on earth of God the Father. He was that representative. This individual, as God's people see him, this man of sin, is the human representative on the earth of Satan, the devil. We've studied this for years. We've known this, but imagine what this is going to be like when we have a person who is the human representative of everything that Satan, the devil, follows and abides, and his whole playbook. This person is representative of that. And this person comes on the scene with, as we see here, incredible miracles. As we look on, he says, do you not remember that when I was still with you, I talked to you about these things? Verse 6, and you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. Some have thought this is referring to this lawlessness is being held down until at the right time when God allows that to be unrestrained. Verse 7, for the mystery of lawlessness, it's already at work. It was at work then, and it's going to be at work even greater as this horse rides. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Again, possibly he represents the governing powers. But anyway, verse 8 comes to the essence. And then this lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. We see when he is restored. He is restored. He is not restored, but destroyed. He's destroyed with the brightness of Christ's coming as Christ returns. Revelation 19 discusses that as that false prophet is cast into the lake of fire as Christ returns. But verse 9, as we see this individual is going to come on the scene that is the representative of Satan, the devil. This individual will have incredible workings of Satan. He'll have powers. He'll have signs, lying wonders. It's not just tricks that this individual will be able to do. It's not a little sleight of hand. Where did I put? Oh, there's the coin. Oh, right here. It's not that kind of thing. This person has abilities. This person has the ability to perform miracles, legitimate miracles. What is that going to be like for the world that is already ruled by the god of this world, Satan, to finally be allowed, where God will allow a person to come on the scene that can do incredible things that they have never seen before? It does make sense that people will follow this individual that sits there at the temple of God and sets himself up in that authority as he is doing these incredible miracles. It is going to happen. How could God's people get to the point to where God's people couldn't see that, or God's people couldn't recognize that? I submit to you again that it deals with the aspect of living God's way of life. Talk with someone who has drifted away. Talk with someone who has drifted away from the truth. Talk with someone who's not kept the feast days for many years. Ask them a question about it, and see if they have any clear recognition of how that plays out, of how the plan of God plays out. It's just kind of gone. It just kind of drifts off. And it's not there. And to grab that and to have that understanding is not there. And yet we have to go through this every year. And we talk about how, especially with young people, teens, do each of us know exactly every single holy day in order and the meaning and all the ramifications of the meaning of every single holy day in order? If I called your name right now, do you want me to name a teen? I'm looking at some of you. I could name you and just say, please stand up and please tell me the meaning of each of the holy days and in their order. How many of us adults would say, I'm ready, hit me right now? Maybe quite a few of us. But it is that thing of, as we're learning and as we're developing, even as a young person, it is a process. We're seeing all of God's way working, and we may not have all of the meanings of all the holy days down. Some of you parents may teach that to your children and have your children talk about that regularly, and I think that is great. But it is more than that. It's more of a thing of we do this every year. We live God's way of life. We talk about God's way of life. Our children experience this way of life. And as their minds develop and mature to where they can process that kind of thing, just like Burnett couldn't process Algebra 2 at age 15, 16 like I could have, but while I was 28, 29, it made sense to me. It's the same thing with kids. You talk about, you walk the walk, you talk about the way, you keep the feasts every year, and it builds an understanding to where as these kinds of things happen, and we're walking in God's way of life, we see lawlessness and we see law-keeping. We see the difference. But young people, as we go through what we go through, and as we begin to be able to make decisions on our own, I submit to you that if you do not stay connected with the truth, if you do not stay connected with God's holy days, if you do not stay connected with God's plan, it drifts away, and it does not have the clarity that it has, and that's how I think so many that have never had God's truth, as well as those that have God's truth, that have let it slip away, will be able to be deceived by this mystery of lawlessness. Verse 10 now, and with all unrighteous deception among those who are perishing, as the Greek brings out, because they didn't receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. Young people, old, all of us, We've got to receive the love of the truth. We've got to love it. We've got to drink in of it. We've got to think about it. We've got to live it. We've got to experience it every Sabbath. We've got to experience it in our daily lives as we get up every morning and we pray. Is everybody in here praying every day? Are you doing that? Are you praying every morning? Or are you at least praying every day? Are you reading the Bible every day? How valuable is God's way of life to us? Am I reading the Bible every day? Do I take a break? I can take a break today. I prepared for my sermon and I did 6 hours and I'm just done. So does that give me a couple of days off? How important is this way of life to us? I have to continue to drive myself to get my nose in the Bible. As busy as we all are. Well, the mystery of lawlessness is there. The deception is there. If we are not grounded in the truth, it can sneak up on us and grab us. For this reason, God will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. It is an aspect that's there. As we drift from the truth, or don't come to the point where we recognize this is the truth, this is the plan of God, this is for me, this is for all of mankind, we drift away, and the pulls of unrighteousness are there. Boy, it's a battle. It's a battle. Believe the lie, not receive the love of the truth, sin strong delusion. Okay, let's turn back to Revelation 6. While you're turning there, remember the passage of Psalm 111, verse 10. I think about that often as I reflect on 2 Thessalonians 2. A good understanding have those who keep his commandments. Doesn't say a good understanding have those who know his commandments. Yeah, we've got to keep them, we've got to know them. But a good understanding have those who keep his commandments. We must be walking in them. How important is keeping the teachings of God to each of us? So anyway, in conclusion to that point, the implication here is that this man of sin, this son of perdition, is going to be victorious. The false religion down through the ages has been victorious. It has been conquering. At the very end, this man of sin comes on the scene. He is the epitome of everything that the white horse represents. He is the representative of Satan the devil, the human representative on earth. He will be conquering. He will be victorious. He will be doing incredible feats that the world will marvel about. Will God's people recognize the difference? This is coming. This will come soon. He's successful and he's victorious in his efforts right up until the return of Jesus Christ. because as we know in Revelation 11, his efforts, and by his efforts, they are able to even defeat, or God has allowed this to happen, they actually kill the two witnesses. But that this individual and everything that he represents and all of false religion will be defeated at Christ's return. Revelation 6, verse 3, we look at the second horse, and that one is the red horse. That's the one that always fascinated me the most as I watched the telecast. This red horse, meaning war, and we think of red, we think of blood being spilled. He opened the second seal, and I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. As let's look at Matthew 24 really quickly. Matthew 24. Again, as I mentioned, these parallel each other. It's quite interesting how Matthew 24 parallels this. It talks about the thing of folks claiming that they're Christ, coming in his name, and then the very next thing that comes up in verse 6 of chapter 24 is that you'll hear of wars, you'll hear of rumors of wars. Don't be troubled about this, for all these things have to come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nations are going to rise against nation, kingdoms against kingdoms. These things are going to be happening. And then as you read the rest of verse 7, we see the third and fourth horsemen depicted there. But nations going against nation. As we think of wars, and you've heard the statistics of how many years there have been in the world since the world began where the world has been without war. I mean, we've had lots and lots of war down through the years. But just as we move into this phase, it's literally happening weekly, changes in dynamics of what's happening politically and who's siding up with who and where the next danger looms in terms of this happening or this could trigger this. Ever since we got through the two world wars, you look at the death toll that's happened across the globe. It is phenomenal in comparison. We think of in the development of communism in China. China is said to have killed more in that time than all that happened in World War II. In the Soviet Union with Stalin and Lenin, the deaths that occurred there as that came into power, the Korean conflict, Cambodia, Vietnam, Africa, just the slaughtering of people that happens and still happens in Africa. The Serbian situation, and right now the issues that we have going on in the Middle East. All of these things, the present conflicts in Gaza and Israel, the seeming success that America had with the whole situation of Saddam Hussein, and how that's unraveled. Look how quickly it's unraveled. Look at it is just in total upheaval in Iraq right now. Afghanistan coming unraveled. Syria. Whom do we help in Syria? Do we help? We don't help ISIL. We don't help them because they were battling against the Syrian government, which was extremely oppressive. But if we help them, they want to kill us and behead all of us here in America. So we probably shouldn't help them. Shouldn't help this guy over here. So we're looking to try to find. Can we find a good rebel out there that's not really, with either one of them that really wants to try to get things in control in Syria? It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's crazy. But the God of this world is extremely active. America right now is in the process of trying to get a coalition of Arab countries to deal with ISIS. How do we do that? How does that take place? We don't want to put any boots on the ground. Yet others are saying you don't begin to get a handle on this conflict unless you put boots on the ground. Should America lead in this, or should America look to get a greater effort of Europe and other countries to support that? China is investing everywhere. China is investing in Africa, putting millions and millions and billions of dollars into Africa to try to gain support there so that they can get control. And of course, so many vital resources are in Africa. America recently had a summit of African countries, and part of that, as I listened to a report, was to kind of offset what China's doing and saying, hey, America's still in the game. We would still want to be a part of this. We want to still try to help. The situation with just south of us with the Latin American governments the impact of the gangs and the cartels on every aspect of human life. So many times we get in these political things of, well, what should America do to protect its borders, and we need to do this and that to protect our borders. Well, as you look in, we try to get a balanced view of that. There is tremendous oppression in many of these Latin American countries, and many of these people are fleeing for their lives. Parents are spending every bit of money that they have to try to get their children up here across the border, and they get across the border illegally. And if we send them back, the kids are going back to death. They'll be murdered. They'll be murdered in the countries where they are. It's a horrible mess. Is it God's people's responsibility to get involved in that and make a decision about, we as America need to do this, or we as America need to do this? We as spiritual Israel need to be seeking God's kingdom. We need to be focused upon the return of Christ. We need to be focused upon getting our lives in order, serving others as we're able, and staying focused on the true matter at hand. This world is so messed up, and this horse is riding now, and it's going to ride more vigorously as we near Christ's return. We must be very, very careful as God's people not to get caught up in the political wranglings of what we see happening in our nation and what we see happening around the world, because we are ambassadors of what we want to see come. We're ambassadors of that individual that sits at God's right hand, who is returning. A Wall Street Journal political analyst was recently interviewed on Fox News. This was back in July. And this person was stating how Europe is realizing that Europe is going to need to step it up on the world scene in situations like the Ukraine situation. Is that just a drop in the bucket? Is that just a thing that's going to come and go with Russia and Europe? But they're saying Europe is realizing they're going to have to step it up as Europe watches the United States pulling back in taking less and less of an active role than it has in the past in these kinds of matters. In the last 30 or 40 years, Europe has taken its cues from America. What's America doing? And they tend to kind of, they'll bump up against us on some things, but in the end, so much of the time, they've taken their cues from America. At what point will Europe step it up? At what point will they come together and coalesce and realize they need to do what they need to do? We know that through prophecy and through the resurrections of the Holy Roman Empire, when that happens, that's when things are going to start moving ahead very, very quickly. So keep an eye on the riding of this second horse. It's riding now, and it's going to ride more vigorously as Christ's return nears. The third one is the black horse. Let's look in verse 5. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So he did so, and he said, "I saw a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, 1 quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Do not harm the oil and the wine." So a real discrepancy here with these figures, a real discrepancy in the value of something and what you get as a result for the cost. A time of great scarcity on earth, a time of famine. We've seen famine throughout the world at different times, and different areas of the world right now are in a state of famine. We have not known famine here. We saw times where people went without food to a large degree through the Great Depression, but we have not known famine like this famine is being talked about. When that time comes, it will be a tremendous challenge for the world, and it will create an opportunity for other things to happen as people go without. This is prophesied to occur. We come finally to the fourth horse, this pale horse, not the Clint Eastwood type that I remember watching a few years back. But he says here, when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come and see. And he looked, and behold, a pale horse, a sickly green horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades, the grave, followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. As we look at that passage, part of our understanding of that has dealt with this pale, sickly green horse and tying that to the pestilences, the diseases that will take place. Certainly, right now, one of the concerns has been talked about much in the news is the Ebola outbreak and what's going to happen with that. Is that something that could become a pandemic and go all across the world? It is one of the worst, it is the worst outbreak of Ebola virus in history, which so far has infected at least 5,357 people in West Africa, according to the World Health Organization. This is a Fox News report from this past week. In an update on the epidemic, which is raging through Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, and has spread into Nigeria and Senegal, the World Health Organization said there was no signs of it yet slowing. So it is continuing to go. So many things happening in that area. So what's going to happen with that? What's going to happen if we have one of these situations that we see in some of these movies, these outbreaks that become airborne? And how is that going to impact folks? But not only with this pale horse do we see this sickly green nature of it that leads to the pestilences and diseases as are talked about in Matthew 24:7. We won't turn there. But it also is, in a sense, this horse that rides that kind of, it has several components to it. Not just this aspect of disease, but also the fact of, again, killing with the sword. Just as we saw with the second horse, we see with the fourth horse, there is more killing with the swords. There is more hunger with death and by the beasts of the earth. Some have thought with the beasts of the earth, is it talking about actual animal beasts? Is it talking about diseases that come through animals, that are spread by animals? Is it talking about human beings who are acting as beasts, as they're just evil people killing? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that is, but as we see this situation happening, we're seeing power was given them to over 1/4 of the earth. But as we look at that, let's go back now to Luke 21. Luke 21. Thinking about these four horses that ride, I especially, as of late, have been thinking about, again, horses 1 and 2. The false religion that is permeating so many aspects of life. Satan comes at it from so many different ways. He's coming at it from the universal church that's trying to bring everybody in that we see going. He comes at it from all of these offshoots that are out there that teach these just horribly deceptive teachings that pull people away. I say offshoots, I mean offshoots of what would be considered the true body of Christ. Folks that are out there that are teaching heinous things, different aspects of traditional Christianity. They're teaching false things. I mean, Satan is very active, and he has many tricks in his bag. But as I think of that, Luke 21, verse 9, I think of that, and I think of the second this second horse and everything that's going on right now with Islam and the works of ISIS. They are really trying, there are many that are really trying to pull that group together. These, as Scripture talks about, these brothers that are going to be against each other. But if they can unite, if they can get at least enough on the same page, we have folks that want to slaughter everybody who does not believe the way that they believe. That is, and they're open about it. It's not like it's, oh, well, you know what, this is a subtle thing. No, they're very open about it. In this most recent article by Breitbart.com, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb have come together to call upon the Muslim world, both Sunni and Shiite, to stop fighting each other and unite against the West, specifically the United States. We call upon the Muslim community to support our people in Iraq and support them with the valuable and priceless, and stand in their ranks against America, the source of evil and symbol of corruption and injustice, the statement read, which was posted Tuesday by an official Al-Qaeda Twitter account. The bulletin continued, "Stop the infighting between you and stand as one rank against America's campaign and that of its satanic alliance that lies in wait for all of us to break us stick by stick." Islamic State, according to telegraph.co.uk, the Islamic State, ISIL, has encouraged lone wolf attacks by extremists equipped with homemade pipe bombs on Times Square and other high-profile U.S. tourist destinations, according to reports. A message posted on ISIL forum entitled, "To the Lone Wolves in America, How to Make a Bomb in Your Kitchen to Create Scenes of Horror in Tourist Spots and Other Targets," surfaced in the last 24 hours. In it, supporters of the extremist organization are told to plant explosives in busy public locations in New York, Las Vegas, and Texas, and at metro stations across the U.S. I mean, this is the beginning of what they're wanting to do, and a mission that they believe is of God. Luke 21, verse 9, he says, after stating the things that we have talked about, in other places it comes after that, but it's all discussing this. He says, when you hear of wars and commotions, don't be terrified. These things have to come to pass first, but the end will not come immediately. He said, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. But before all these things, they'll lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons. You will be brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. As I think about these four horsemen, we know that the next one, the fifth one, is talking about the persecution that comes upon the people of God. We know that there's a passage that talks about some being taken to her place to be nurtured for a time, times and half a time. Satan goes out to make war with the rest of her offspring. We know that there will be folks who will suffer persecution. Mr. Burnett was talking about the great multitude that comes out of that tribulation. These times are going to be intensifying. But even then, we have not gotten to that point yet. The four horsemen are starting their ride, and have been riding. They have not intensified fully, and we haven't gotten to the point yet of the persecution of the saints, where they are completely being overpowered by this power as it comes on the scene. We haven't come to this sense yet where this person has been revealed, this man of sin. What's our role as God's people? Are we to try to predict when this will happen? Are we to try to figure out when these have been totally and completely fulfilled? Again, as we've said for many years, even though the seals are mentioned successively, the first four horsemen will continue to ride right up until the return of Christ. Let's turn finally, if we could, to Mark 8. Judy Dane said I could share this with you. I had a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago. talked with Judy about just some of what they're planning for and the challenges that they face in the things that they're going through. And in talking with her, she made mention of, without God in the picture. I say this to our young people. I say this to our folks who know that they may not have another 60 years left either. Without God in the picture, what is the picture? What is the picture? What is the picture of life? As we talked about all that's going on in the news right now, and we think, okay, well, what is that? What would it be like for us to be out in the world and to not understand what we understand? What would that be for us? How would that be for us? How could we process everything that's going on, the things that are going on that we see happening with the dangers that we see, the things that ISIS is openly stating that they would like to do and that they want people to do in our own nation, that we see them doing throughout the world, that we see other nations. If we saw all of this from the standpoint of not having the truth that we have, what would that be like? How fearful would we be? And how much joy do we have knowing that this will end? The joy that we can know that by going through what we go through in this life now, the trying ground that we're on, the challenges that we face, the sufferings that we suffer, by going through all of that, we know that we are growing spiritually and that we are becoming more like Christ, and we are becoming better able to be used by Christ to do whatever He wants to do with us as we are His servants. The danger as we talk about all of these kinds of things is this thing of feeling like there's some kind of power associated with knowing all of these things. So I can figure out when this is and when this is and when that is. And people are going to be doing more and more of that, as we see in Scripture where it says, oh, he's over here, he's this or that, or he's coming then. I know he's going to come at this time, so let's be ready because he's coming right at this time. And there's more of that, and more of that will continue to go on. So there is that danger, but we're not talking about that kind of power. We're talking about the power that God gives us through the power of His Holy Spirit to recognize what it's all about, what our role is now, and how God will get us through that till we breathe our last breath. That is the essence of the joy that we have, that regardless of whether this world continues, where the Great Tribulation starts tomorrow, and then 3.5 years later Jesus Christ returns approximately, or whether the Great Tribulation starts in 70 years. It does not matter to God's people because of the joy that we have of the understanding of the return of Jesus Christ, of when it's going to happen, and that as we endure to the end, we will be there to enjoy that time when He does return. In Mark 8, I think I said Mark 8, right after Jesus Christ makes the statement, "Get behind me, Satan," to Peter, telling him, okay, get your mind straight, Peter. Get your mind straight about what this life is all about. We come to this statement, I believe Mr. Franks talked about it in his recent message. And I think this comes to the essence of, even as we talk to the events leading up to the return of Christ, even as we talk with the events leading up to the beginning of the Great Tribulation, which later leads up to the events of the Feast of Trumpets, which they picture leading to the return of Christ, all of these things, this is the essence of what we must keep in our minds in terms of loving God versus loving our own lives. Young people and old, the degree to which we hold out for this seeming pleasure of this life. God wants us to enjoy the blessings of this life. God wants us to plan. God wants us to have plan to have families and bring more into the world. And as we talked in a recent study group with the young married couples, one mentioned that every new child that's born is a new person that has the opportunity to be in the family of God. We're about planning our lives, and God wants us to do that. He wants us to move forward in our lives and do that. We don't know when Christ is going to return, but we do know that we are not to love our own lives or seek on gathering our own pleasure, as 2 Thessalonians 2 talked about. They loved pleasure, pleasing themselves more than pleasing God. We've got to be about God's business. And part of the meaning of these fall holy days that we're about to keep is a reminder of that. We are about God's business. We're not about our lives. We know God's going to take care of us. He has taken care of us, and He will continue to take care of us. He says, verse 35, for whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's, as Mr. Franks beautifully brought out, will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world? What will it? I mean, should we plan? Should we do well? Should we be studious and build upon what we've earned and be good stewards of finances? Of course we should. Should we pay our tithes? Yes, of course we should. But what's our drive? What drives us in life? What's the profit of man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? So as a result, we keep in mind what is ever important as we go day in and day out in our schools, day in and day out in our workplace, day in and day out with our neighbors, day in and day out with our families, day in and day out with one another. We think about this passage. May we never be ashamed of Jesus Christ and His words, because we live in an adulterous and we live in a sinful generation. We don't want to be in the situation of where we are coming before God and the Son of Man is ashamed of us when He comes in the glory of His Father with the holy angels. We want God to, as Christ returns, we want Christ to say, here is this person, as we talked before. Here is this person that I bring gladly before you. This person did not love his life to the death. This person loved me. This person lived his life for me. This person lived his life for this way of life. Come enter the joy of my kingdom.